And we should be live. That's weird. Sometimes it just takes a while. Huh. I think we are streaming. But I don't know.
I haven't got a notification yet.
Yeah, I don't either. It's probably because of the previous stream.
Yeah.
Sometimes it has to catch up. I don't know. We'll see. I think people in the chat.
People in the chat, can you see us?
Yeah, we could see if they're getting anything. Let's see. Live stream.
One quick thing, Snork. The one thing that really shits me is that the Australian public pay for the trips of any of the royal family to come out to Australia. Mm-hmm. So we'll pay for all the security, the plane flights, the accommodation, everything.
And that could be a lot.
Yeah, the last time the Queen was out, I think it was $25 million.
Is there a royal residence in New Zealand?
I don't know about New Zealand, but there's not one in Australia.
Yeah, I know so little about it. That's why I asked you first, because I don't think it's right for somebody that doesn't know to make a statement.
Well, I only know about Australia, really, but yeah, we have Kirribilli House, which is like our White House, but nothing happens there. Everything happens at Parliament House. So, yeah, it's just a residence where they have to hold like functions and stuff like that. But the Queen and the royal family usually stay in hotels, 5-star hotels around the country, and they usually shut the whole hotel down. So the royal family is in the hotel by themselves for security reasons.
Mm-hmm.
It's a useless institution, but in many ways I'm kind of torn on it for the same reason that I'm torn about the Catholic Church. I don't like Catholicism, and I think that spending money that way is absolute hypocrisy. But when you see like a beautiful basilica, or you know, it's I like architecture. So yeah, all the royal residences and stuff, like, you know, I don't know if they want to maintain their traditions to a certain degree. That's one thing, but when it, you know, becomes too expensive or burdensome, something has to be done about it.
But it's not like hang on. It's not like they build those type of buildings anymore anyway. You know what I mean?
Well, at that time, if you wanted to do a building like that, you had to do it through the church.
Yeah.
You wanted to build some big building or do anything public, the church had to get a cut, and you had to have something before you say, you know, this is an homage to God, or you didn't get it done.
Yeah.
Or you died.
But even still, like, the thing that really bugs me the most is that religious institutions aren't taxed. And that's what bugs me the most.
They aren't taxed here either, and neither are the businesses they run.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And I guess the thing that bugs me the most is that they'll ask people who can least afford it to donate money, but not reinvest that money back into the community of which those people come from.
Well, to me, when I see somebody asking for money and they're having weekly meetings in this gilded, huge building, to me it's sell some artwork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
It's beyond,
I'm the same.
Like, a bishop has enough silk and gold on him to like feed 50 families for a year.
That's not enough gold then. I think.
Yeah.
It's got to be 100 families for 2 years.
I think that you're using the wrong metric. it's their payouts for hush money for their victims of pedophilia could feed many large cities.
We just turned dark.
At least some towns. It could feed some small towns for an extended period, several of them.
Well, look at just the money that they make by fighting abortion. Now, we look at abortion as whatever, but what is it to the church? It's an extreme income. Babies are a lot of money. So they make it a complete guilt trip on the women for getting pregnant. And then for the ones that feel that they have to hide it because they've been successfully guilted into hiding it, and this is more prevalent in the past than now, their families would have to fork up extreme amounts of money to keep the birth side quiet. Then after the birth, they get this baby to give out for an extraordinary amount of money that they don't sell, but the families have to give extraordinary proving fees to prove that they're able to raise enough money for the kid to live. So they have to give an enormous amount of money for the church per baby. So just a couple of abortions prevented by the Catholic Church can fund them for a long time. Now, in the past, when everybody went to church, that meant they pretty much had a churchgoer for life. And of course, that child would be adopted into a Catholic family or whichever church it was. I know a similar case that's happened in the Methodist Church, where in 1955, the family's cost to keep quiet was the equivalent of 4 Oldsmobiles. And then the family that adopted, which we also got to know, had to pay the equivalent of 4 Oldsmobiles to get the child.
Extortion.
And so I'm basing an Oldsmobile on it was a good midline car. Would have been costly. So you're talking about a person's income, an average person's median income here in the United States, that the adoption would be the equivalent of 4 median incomes, and the hush money for not pointing the girl out as a slut to the society would be equal, another 4. So eight median incomes went to that church for it. And I suppose they probably had to give 50% upstairs because it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a Ponzi's not the correct thing, but or a pyramid. No, is it pyramid? Yeah, where the money keeps going to the top.
Yeah.
So and people don't realize, why are these churches so anti-abortion? You take away, or you allow abortions, you're taking away their income, and with their declining attendance, they really need the income, or they're gonna have to start selling some gold goblets and stuff. And the ministers and priests might not be able to take as many trips to Thailand to cater, preach. What do you call it? When they go to visit somebody to try to.
I don't want to know what they call it.
Yeah, definitely going to Thailand.
Yeah, but I remember the town I just moved away from 2 years ago. Right before I left, there was this huge fundraiser to send a minister for a 2-week ministering in Thailand.
Oh God!
And then there's photos of him going to the lady boy.
All right. Let's move on to the topic at hand, because this can go pretty bad. All right. So revolutions against corrupt governments. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I think, Gardner, I know your thing. You want a peaceful revolution, right? I think a lot of people want peaceful revolutions. But there, like one quote that I do like from JFK, and it says, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable." And the reason I bring that up is because if we're just a bunch of peace-loving hippie pacifists or just wimps, that we're not really going to do anything but just kind of march and have signs and just kind of wait till things change, like wait till the corrupt people in power give us what they want, they're just not going to do anything. And I think that's why I agree with that quote that um the, they make peaceful revolution impossible because they know that the people who are just going to just be saying, oh, we just want a peaceful revolution and we want you guys out, can be like, yeah, right. do you does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that quote before, and I agree with it. Of course, it's those. If you're not going to allow a peaceful revolution, your people are going to act up. It's not about really what you or I would choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's about viewing the way society, progresses into one action or another. The reason why I will not advocate for any violent actions is because I'm not going to be the one who gets that ball rolling. Now, it might get rolling on its own accord,
Mm-hmm.
because no matter what people do, they're provided no recourse. And there's increasing amounts of pressure and violence put against them in order to get them to fall in line, right? That's what it would come down to. So we want to avoid that. It's not a matter of, again, it's not a matter of what I would do or what you would do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of, once society starts rolling in a certain direction, it's going to keep rolling in that direction, at least for a while. And in our current environment, again, that's a disaster. Even 2 or 3 weeks of chaos in this country would maybe cause, God knows what would happen.
Yeah.
Some environmentalists, again, charge a gas refinery, or some maniac, like part of our military, like decides fuck you and takes over like some kind of ammo dump or something. The violent revolutions are just, people have these strange ideas about them because all they hear about are the ones that succeed.
Mm-hmm. Now, so do you guys have any country that you know of recently that ended their corrupt government? I can give you.
I can.
What are you talking about, Iceland?
Yep, Iceland in 2013.
I can't think of any non-violent ones.
But there's an article that was written about Iceland's revolution and how mainstream media in the U.S. pretty much didn't really mention it, except for maybe one or two that it was going on, but there's really weren't any details about it. And just an interesting thing, we were looking at the Transparency International, the World Corruption Index, and Iceland is number 14, but before their revolution against the corrupt government, they were scored as 82, and then once they overthrew the corrupt government and everyone in it, they went down. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's just, again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to avoid the point that Kennedy was making.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to get to the point where the people are allowed no other recourse except to, smash up the local police station or do something else crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that's more vandalism and not necessarily a revolution. I think.
Well, that's how it starts, is like people start doing these small things and then the clamps start coming down and then the people react to the clamps and the clamps react to the people. And, that's pretty soon you've got, cops using live bullets on citizens. I mean, nowadays, like, it's going to be a bit different. Like, I was talking the other night about Barbara Boxer and the way she flipped off Bernie, right? And I was imagining a scenario where the crowd gets pissed enough, they would surge on her. Well, pretty soon you're going to have something non-lethal crowd control devices that if the crowd surged on her, like one of these people would be able to carry one of these things around and it would be able to stop 150 people dead in their tracks. So again, we're moving into a different dynamic as far as that stuff goes. I mean, how viable is a violent revolution in the first place? Just based on the fucking force multiplier.
I mean,
Sure, again, we can do countermeasures like, okay, let's get 10 dudes in the crowd that have white noise generators, and that'll stop the anti-crowd devices. Well, we just made a better anti-crowd device that like gets past white noise generators.
yeah. I mean, it's
Goes
kind of
on
like
and on.
pick the people who aren't in power. It's just kind of pick your poison. Do you want to die a slow death, being bled dry for no money, no power, or do you want to die fighting the people in power who have the military, who have the police, who have the communications and the weaponry?
But it's not just you dying. That's the thing.
No, it's not. Yeah, I know. I mean, but the thing is, uh, there's usually a line. It's not just you, but if you have family, your family, is you're kind of choosing for your family. I think most people will settle for, yeah, they'll just take my land, they'll take my money, but we'll just keep moving further away and just keep scraping by, and then eventually it's that you can't do that anymore, and then at that point maybe things are just too hopeless to even fight back because there's just too much control consolidated into one power.
And Iceland is a little bit different than us. The whole country is like 100,000 people.
Yeah.
And there are people that take care of other people's interests. The majority of them, once I got rid of the bankers, were interested in each other. They have a culture of cooperation. And they've basically kind of separated from religion quite a bit. And in our country, if we did any kind of revolution at all, there's so many people that are put their interests above everything, and that the religious have a lot of power. They can kill a lot of people. That I don't see any type of revolution being feasible for us to move to, that the ultra religious would not take over this country and nuke the rest of the world.
Boy, that's a disappointing thought.
Well, have you guys ever seen the film? This is a famous one, Jesus Camp. Ever see Jesus Camp?
I think I saw previews for it, but I never saw it.
All right, well, a short synopsis. Like, Jesus Camp is a film about a kids camp. It's an ultra right-wing kids camp, and they teach them some militaristic values. Let's put it that way. And it's a fascinating documentary. But there's a lot of people in this country that are like that, like enough of them, or enough that sympathize with them, because they don't necessarily have to be them. They just have to sympathize with them, or just be the type that, just kind of followers in general. All these people are Christians, so even though like they're advocating like throwing grenades, into shopping centers or something. There's the other culture, but it's deeply embedded in our military. Okay, like the Air Force is pretty hardcore right-wing Christian. A lot of like the higher elements in the Air Force are super Christian. So, religious takeover, cultural takeover of our country. It's such a big place too. I mean, America would fragment under those circumstances. And it might reunify in a couple of larger bits, but again, I can't if we had a hardcore violent French type revolution today, I don't see worrying about the country fragmenting as even being an issue. Because within 2 months, like, it's very possible that huge portions of the earth would be rendered unlivable.
Is a problem just that there's just too few to represent the growing population of the U.S.? Like, we didn't really expand the amount of senators and the amount of representatives since over at least a century or two. I'm not sure. I think we might have. I mean, for every state and population, the representatives might grow.
Not only that, but the distribution of their philosophies. I'm in Iowa. I have more senatorial representation than Californians, but I feel that many Californians are much more responsible people than Iowans. And that's what needs to be fixed. Maybe we don't need all these extra states all having senators. But that's another thing. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, no. Go on. It's good.
But I think it's a major thing that California is huge. And that how many thousands of Californians share a senator versus how many hundreds of Iowans.
Yeah.
And we're not even the worst ones. The redder the state gets, the more they have senatorial representation. Look at North Dakota. Look at Montana. These states have huge power in Congress. And there's only a few people making the basic decisions whether they get into office or not.
Yeah, that is true.
Imagine go ahead, Ryan.
Imagine how much money they would spend if they actually did expand the amount of Congress and senators, because then they'd have to expand the building that they're in. Could you imagine how much money they would just say, yeah, let's go, if they decided to expand it?
Well, what you're talking about is combining districts, right?
Well, I would like to see states absolved. I don't see one be 2 Dakotas when they don't even have the population for one.
So combining the states, or just straight up absolving states?
Period? Combining them. Like, realistically, should Iowa be a separate state than Minnesota?
No, there's nothing out there.
Iowans. I think you'd have a lot of Iowans saying, hell no.
I know you would. I'm there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Trying to think fairly, I'm thinking that Iowa and Nebraska, these states used to be merged. Kansas and Nebraska used to be one state. Before it was a state, when it was a territory, it was 2. Then they split it because they needed more balance against other states. They were trying to take some power away from the southern states, so they made sure these huge states didn't become really huge. They split them up. And as soon as they met the minimum number of people, they became a state. Then they filled in.
Sorry, go.
Yeah, but Montana is bigger than most countries on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And most cities on the planet are bigger than Montana population-wise.
Yeah. It's like in Australia, our population's grown so much that they're thinking of splitting one of the states in half, because you have the people who believe that you have the northern part, which is mostly farmers and rural and all that type of stuff. They're the ones that think that if you change the clock to daylight savings, it bleaches your curtains. Whereas if you got the southern part of the state that say, yeah, we want daylight saving because it's good for the economy. So there's been big talk about splitting the state in half, which wouldn't be a bad idea, to be honest with you.
Right. So hi Amanda, hi Stevie. You guys have came in. So is there anything you guys want to talk about as far as the previous topic or the current one?
Oh, I just started listening.
Okay. Amanda, do you have anything?
Well, it's kind of amusing that Garden brought up that movie Jesus Camp, because I saw it around I think I was 35 years old, and I remember it triggering the fuck out of me because that was the type of religion bullshit that was pushed into my head, and just the moment he said it, even it just went because I just remember on all the training programming about how us Christians were going to rule the world one day, and we were going to be the ones that were prospering, and all the sinners were going to be poor. And it was like, and it was not just that type of teaching that bothered me more. And what bothered me more is that they programmed me to be okay with it. And I remember that deep-rooted being okay with it. And God, I was sanctimonious for so long, like mid-20s. And it was just, that was hard to, because poor hits everybody that is not government or not establishment.
I'm wondering if we do have a revolution, are we going to just, because I'm thinking we can't really force corrupt people to do what we want, and we don't want to do wage an all-out war, vandalism and whatnot. So is the thing to do, are there going to be like maybe a core group of people that might pressure people in power that are corrupt? You don't think that'll ever happen?
Mm-mm.
Because the only way to reverse, say, Citizens United, for example, is to get the politicians who got elected because of Citizens United to vote against and overturn Citizens United.
That's not going to happen.
So how do we even go about?
Quit feeding it, man. That's step one for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Just quit feeding it. Quit buying shit you don't need. If you can find a better place to work, if you're working at a place that has unfair practices. Now, I understand there's no other place to work. There's no other place to work. If there's nothing else, no other stores but a Walmart in your town, or you can't afford to go any place but Walmart, then that's all good. You don't have any choices. But whenever you have choices, quit buying from these fucking people. Quit buying shit you don't need. Like, that's step one for most people. Most people can't even do that. They can't even do that. So, if they can get to that point, then maybe we can go farther.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I just thought of an idea is that going on Garden saying is that every time you go to buy something, be informed of that product, if that product's manufacturers actually pay politicians. And if it does, then try and find an alternative product where made by a different company, and then inform that politician and say, hey, look, you're you've been funded by Citizens United, by this corporation, and I chose not to shop there. And the product that I wanted to buy was made by this corporation that funds you through Citizens United, and I decided to not buy it through that company. And things like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I feel like this is, like they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. I feel like we've tried this strategy since the 60s, and it hasn't really given us the result that we wanted. And in the US, I can think of 3 major revolutions that we've had. First one is against Britain for our independence. Another was the Civil War, which freed the slaves and kept the country together. And another one was the Civil Rights Movement, where we gave people of color voting rights. So is revolution a bad thing? I don't think so.
Well, first, there's never been a major divestment movement in this country. So it's not like we're trying something over and over again. It's not working. We just haven't built up to the critical mass that's needed
Yeah,
to
I
make
think
it
it's
work.
a good strategy, but I think maybe our tactics about like executing it need to be changed. How do we bring more people on board? How do we give them options to get them out of that system? Because I mean, living here, I've seen people that get. I mean, I get stuck in certain systems, and it's like, God, it's like if I had this, I could get out of this, but I don't have that, so I can't get out of that, and it's like it's so frustrating. But maybe instead of like donating to politicians or spending money at Walmart, we could start something um, like with Kevin's idea, which was to get people off the grid. Get people like with a local food and all that stuff. It's like maybe we can like start fundraising certain projects like that in some of these areas that of like politicians where they're doing a lot of harm.
Well, divestment isn't going to be a choice. Like as people become poorer and society continues to stratify, like divestment will become the rule of the day. You don't have any money to buy anything. So as time goes on, more people will divest. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of making that a political action, turning that into political action. As far as Ryan, as far as your idea about the way, researching the companies and finding out and contacting them regarding why you're divesting from them. Unfortunately, the way these companies look at the world is any interest in their product is a positive, and they'll try to spin it. So just quit buying from them. Don't even tell them why. Interests are becoming so consolidated anyways that in the end, you're probably buying from the same 3 companies over and over anyway. So just divest. Quit buying from them. Quit showing any interest in them at all, whether it be in media. Don't
Yeah, if you divest, you pretty much have to divest in everything that's that's just very popular public. You'd have to stick with things that are local that don't have chains. I mean, like chain stores is what I meant, because there's so many companies that are like a percentage of them are owned by some other corporation. We've gotten to the point of like huge umbrella corporations where one type of one person or one group just has their hand in everything. And so if you're going to divest, the only way to do it is just to divest fully and try to do things at the local level. But then there's that problem with local products is they have to get the source for their goods somewhere, and it's always going to be most likely from one of those bigger umbrella those corporations that are under this big umbrella corporation.
It's impossible for us to divest completely at this point. Okay. Mm-hmm. All I'm advocating for is for people to divest as much as possible. Without I understand everyone wants to maintain a certain quality of life and there's certain things they got to do, that's fine, but there is room in almost everyone's life to stop doing certain things.
Yeah. But
and that's where you start, and and then you go from there. I mean,
yeah, and part of my thing is Google, YouTube. So when you I used to do this too, but I didn't know, is when you donated someone via super chat, Google gets a huge chunk of that. They get 27% at least of the money that you donate.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So even with the alternative media usage, if you're donating through super chat, you're a quarter of it's going to Google.
Well, again, like Holly has the best idea as far as that goes. Just get a PO box.
Yeah.
Just eliminate the middleman completely.
All right. So do we want to start getting our mind away from all this depressing talk and just go into an open topic? Anything goes.
I don't know. I don't think this part is depressing. Just, I think going to the dark part would be. Let's stay out of the dark zone. Yeah.
Yeah, planning and strategizing always kind of makes me feel better. It's the hearing about what's going on that's wrong is the depressing part. Like I gotta do something. What do I do? I don't know. Let me just plan something. I don't know.
I always feel like we just have to do something that's different. That'll and see if that works. I mean, just like I'm not sure about anyone else, like Bernie Sanders when he ran in 2016. That was different for me, and that got me woken up. And even though he didn't win, it's just how he did it. Just the turnout of people that just came about and just supported him and stuff. It's just that seemed different. It was does that seem like a unique thing that hasn't happened for a long time, or is that just something that it does happen? We just don't realize it so much.
What, the Sanders movement?
Yeah.
Well, we saw it with Obama to a degree when he first hit the scene, 2008.
I guess that is true.
Boy, that seems like a freaking long time ago to me.
Yeah, man, it's the magic of media. It gets people whipped up, gets their feelings going, you know? And everyone's vulnerable to it to a degree. We're raised in it. How can we not be vulnerable to it?
Oh. Okay. I'm going to switch it to open topic. Anything goes. We can always revisit this too, because we could see if there are actually any countries that are going through a successful revolution. I mean, we do know that is it Venezuela that's currently going through one?
Yeah, that's one way to put it. We've destabilized Venezuela. That's another way to put it.
I guess that is true.
Like, we don't like what Chavez and Morales and those people were doing down there. And we've had about enough of it. And we're hardcore into our destabilization plans by now. Look at the condition of those.
I mean, South Korea, they kind of had a revolution. I mean, remember their prime minister? She was kind of caught being corrupt, and just thousands just went to streets and they pretty much forced her to resign. I don't know exactly how they did it.
Yeah, I mean, in some of these smaller countries, you can get away with that.
Yeah.
You can get out in the street and kind of force your will on the army. But here in the U.S., we just can't do it.
Well, that's also the thing. In South Korea, everyone has to go through military service before, I think, the age of 35. So, I mean, you're talking about people who are going on the streets. They all served in the military. They know how it all operates. And that could be a pretty big thing. I mean, everyone out there. Yeah. Anyways. All right. I'm going to switch it to open topic. Anything goes. I'm going to do the same thing. So everyone on Zoom, please stay on. Everyone in live chat. Yep. The live stream is going to end, but we'll be back in 3 minutes. So